Hello, everyone. How are you? Can you hear me well? Perfect. Thank you for joining me in this session. I know it's the last talk, so I really appreciate staying here for my talk. It's going to be a nice one. We are not going to talk about AI, so if you're here for AI, we are not going to do that. But we will talk about DX, UX, and UI, and we will talk about how you can improve your products as a developer. We will not see any code, yet we will talk about having better products. This talk is for people that are developers, as I mentioned, for people that are building their own products. Maybe you are working in a startup company and your company doesn't have a dedicated designer, so your manager asks you to design some stuff as well. Maybe you don't have a UXer, so you need to make some decisions. You need to have some data to make those decisions. So we will be talking about all those stuff. If you have any questions, because I know that we cannot take questions right now, you can find me on my social media, or you can ask me here. I will stay for a few more time after my talk. If you just simply want to connect with me, you can find me on X or Twitter. I'm pretty active there, or you can find me on my other social media, LinkedIn, I don't know, GitHub, YouTube, Instagram, whatever you prefer. Did I mention that my name is Eleftheria and I'm coming from Greece? I think not. So again, and for the people that are coming right now, I'm Eleftheria and thank you for coming to my talk. We will start with some examples of mainly bad UX and UI, and then we will continue with defining these things once and for all, and we will do that from two different perspectives. We will do it from the perspective of the user, but also from the perspective of the developer/designer. We will continue with the 10 usability heuristics, and you can think of that as 10 rules for creating better products and better apps. And then we will continue with some do's and don'ts for UX, UI, and DX. Without further ado, let's get started. Who said washing your hands is an easy task? It's not. Apparently, it's not. Who said picking the floor on an elevator is an easy task? Again, it's not for everyone. And as I was searching for examples, I actually found a lot of examples with elevators. And also with rooms at hotels. Yeah. And also, how about this? No comments for this one. But if we transition a little bit to our world, to the tech world, I'm pretty sure you have seen something similar to this. So how hard is it to pick a password or to reset a password? And maybe if you're young, you haven't seen something like that. But if you're not that young, you probably have seen something like that as well. Yeah, we have a lot of examples. Let's now see what is UX, DX, and UI, and how you can leverage that as a developer. I will start from the user's perspective, as it's a little bit easier to understand. So from the user's perspective, user interface, or UI, is what the user interacts with, what taps on or clicks on, and the whole experience is localized in a device. So for example, we have our mobile phone, or we have our laptop, a PC, another device. On the other hand, the user experience from the user's perspective is how a user feel when they are interacting with a product. And this time, the whole experience is localized in their physical bodies. So we can see if they are smiling, probably something nice is happening. If they are frustrated, maybe something bad is happening. But we can understand them, we can understand their feelings just by looking at the users. Now, from the developer's perspective, things can be a little bit more complicated. So I would like to start with an analogy. From a very far away from a distance, we can see maybe this big iceberg. And this is what the UI is. We can see it. But it's not only that. We can see that big iceberg because there is the icy weather, there is a huge mountain underneath that iceberg that holds everything together. There is obviously the sea, and this is UX. So from the user interface, from the developer's perspective, is what you can see alongside with what you can't see. And the user experience is what you can see alongside with what you can see and what holds everything together. Now, let's move on to the DX, so the developer experience, because things here are a little bit different. This time, the user is also the developer, or the developer is also the user. And this time, it's about interacting with a technical product. And when we are saying interacting, this can have two meanings. Interacting as of creating a product that other developers are going to use, or just taking that product that the other developers have created for us. And now let's see some more examples. I have an example here from Victor. If you're interested in UX and DX, you can also check that guy on X. He's sharing a lot of examples as well. And he had an issue. I'm going to read the example here. So how do I upgrade if Cloud gives me this when I go to the upgrade page? I think we can all see the error here. And then when he finally managed to upgrade, he was actually living in a country that it didn't support that. So the question here is, why did he have to go through this journey, if very simple Claudia don't support his country? But we have more examples, and these are some personal examples, some examples that I had to deal with. So I was using ChatGPT 3.5, and I got this error. Am I supposed to know which conversation is this? I don't think so. And then I was also using McAfee, and I ran through another error. This time it's a UI error. We're living in 2024, so how difficult is it to have a responsive UI? And then this one, so I was trying to log in, and I was trying to log in, and from one hand, I could see that I have a wrong email or a password, but on the bottom, I could see that it was a success. So I wasn't sure, do I have a wrong email / password, or is this action successful? I don't know. Finally, I figured it out. The password was wrong, but... OK, then we have this. I will give you like a few seconds to, this time, read this example. And if you know what the problem is in this case, you can raise your hand. But you have to read it. This time it's not something visual. OK, shall I give you the answer? This time, if you read this, it says cashback is only eligible for a new user purchasing his first gig. Well, these days, we are not using his. And if you're thinking, OK, maybe you were logged in, OK, I was not logged in, but even if I was logged in, I am her, not his. So we should also be careful about these small but important things. And then again, another example with passwords. I like this one, because if you read the error message, I found it pretty funny. It says password must be between 12 and 512 characters. What? And contain at least one alpha character. Passwords shorter than 20 characters may not have 3 or more repeating characters. I think this is too much rules. I don't know for you, but I found this a little bit complicated. And I also had another issue with Google Drive. I was doing my presentation, and I wanted to upload an image, and I got this error message: one or more image or video formats are invalid or unsupported. So my question is, what is unsupported? Did I try to upload a video, or did I try to upload an image? Is it unsupported, or is it invalid? And how can I solve this issue if I'm not even sure what the problem is? I had a lot of questions, and trust me, later we are going to see how to solve these kind of issues. Here we have another example, like, where are those images? I don't know what happened. We have another issue here. Again, I don't know what happened to this website as well, and these are pretty new examples. That was an example from the company that I was working. I tried to upload something on Mastodon, and I was getting an error. Am I supposed to know that error as a simple user? What was the problem in this case? As a simple user, I couldn't know that. OK, later, as we move on, we will see the solution to all these problems. But now let's see what does a UX designer team do, and as a developer, how you can also leverage that. So UX solves real problems for real people. And I want to focus here to real people, because sometimes as we are developing a product, we think that we are the real users. But this is not the case. We are just the developers of that product. We know this product too well, and that means that we cannot be the real users. If you want the real users, and if you want some real feedback, ask people that they don't even belong to your team, because people in your team may like you, they maybe want to support you, maybe your friends want to support you, so they will say, okay, yes, everything is nice, everything is cool. Or since you are a developer, maybe you're mostly interacting with other developers, which means that they will be good with using technology, but that doesn't mean that all people are on the same level of using technology. For example, if you give this to your parents or to your grandparents, maybe they will not be able to use it as easy as you can use it. So my best tip for finding real users is always go to your mother-in-law. She will tell you the hard truth about your product. Or go to your ex-partner. I'm pretty sure they will give you, again, the hard feedback that you need to create some better products. OK, so the many facets of UX design. And here I have a pyramid of the things that a UX designer maybe do. I will start from the bottom to top. So we have things such as user research and analysis, content strategy, information architecture, interaction design, and the visual design. So the UX person, the UX designer, the UX researcher probably will focus mostly on the three bottom layers. And then if we continue to the UI team, this will work more on the first two layers. If you are a developer, and again, maybe your team doesn't have a dedicated designer, or if you're working on your own product as a solopreneur, maybe you have to work on all of these stages on your own. Now, let's see what UI really is. And I will give you a hint. UI, it's not only how it looks. It's not only colors, it's not only visual things, it's not only typography, but it can be much more. For example, we have a machine, a small machine like this, and we can shout to this machine and they will give us some answers, which is pretty cool. But this is not something visual. We don't have fancy colors or typography here. We don't have images. We don't have anything like that. But this is still a form of UI. It's an audible UI, but it's still a UI. And then we have something that you're maybe more familiar with, something like that. Again, this is UI. I'm not saying it's pretty, but again, we are not focusing here on images or other visual aspects. So just keep that in mind. And since we talked about UI and we talked about UX, let's also see what a DX team do. They are doing quite a few things First of all, they write technical documentation. And this can include things such as release note, knowledge bases, user manuals, and a lot more. And they not only write technical documentation, but they can probably are responsible for creating tutorials, video tutorials. Maybe they are responsible to replying to people on social media or on Discord, or doing this kind of things as well. A DX team are doing these things. And not only that, they are responsible for selecting developer tools. So even if you are already using a tool, that doesn't mean that you should continue working with that if you feel that there are better products that you can use to create your own tool, product, or app. And they are also responsible for defining workflows. A lot of times, as a company or as an individual, you want to do something, but you don't know the best way to do it. By defining workflows, you can help yourself, and you can help the other people in your team as well. And there are different roles as a developer experience team, but I found something that I liked particularly from Uber that said that a developer experience person doesn't have to be a developer per se, but a big team can include other people like technical writers and educators, maybe even video editors and stuff like that. But if you're working on a smaller team, obviously you cannot have all of those things. And as a developer, sometimes you have to wear multiple hats. Now, what makes a good DX? And this is coming from research at GitHub, which says it's collaboration, it's speed, it's short feedback loops, it's low levels of friction and transparency and all of those things, which I believe it's not only for a DX or UX and UI, but they are applicable in a lot of industries as well. Now, I promised when I was starting this presentation that I was not going to talk about AI. I have a couple of slides about AI, but it's mostly because when I was presenting this talk, sometimes people were asking me about AI. So I thought, OK, maybe I can include that as well. And the question that I was getting is AI going to take our job as a developer/designer? And I will focus here a little bit more on the design aspect. The short answer is no. And this is because UI and UX have to do a lot with feelings. They have to do a lot with empathy. And a system right now, a bot, an AI bot, right now at least, they don't have feelings. They don't know what empathy is. So no, they will not take our jobs. Let's move on to the 10 usability heuristics. You can think of that as 10 rules that they will make your products better. Feel free, if you want, just to take out of your phone and check your product if it complies with these rules as well. These rules are coming from Jacob Nielsen and Don Norman. They are the fathers of UX, of user experience, and they were manifested in '95, but they still apply today. Jacob Nielsen was also the one that started UX. He used to be an engineer, and then he did a master's in psychology, and he was the first person that saw how people interact with technical products, and he started working at Apple, and we have Apple as it is today. Because obviously, before him, we did have some sort of design, but the products could only be used from people that had a technical background. OK, let's start with the rules. First rule is visibility of system status. People love to have things under control, which is cool. Like, imagine taking out your phone and you didn't have a photo, you didn't have the time, you didn't have notifications, you didn't have, I don't know, other kind of things. You would feel kind of naked, right? We are used to seeing those things. Now take that on your product as well. People are used to see specific things. We want to show them some information, but we don't want to overdo it. So just keep the important things on the front page of your product. Rule number 2, match between the system and the real world. People presume how the system could work based on the experience they have with other systems. For example, imagine that copy-paste, it works everywhere the same. You don't want to change that in your product, in your application. A lot of times, you don't have to change everything. Just keep them as they are. It will be much easier for your users to do the things that they want to do. Rule number 3 is user control and freedom. Every system should have a clear market emergency exit mechanism. So always try to have an exit button, a back button, or a refresh button, or something like this. Because either we want it or not, our users will make mistakes. We strive to have the perfect product, but that's not always the case. So again, always have this exit button, a back button. It's not that hard to implement it, right? Rule number 4 is consistency and standards. Just because something is different, it doesn't mean that it's useful. And I have seen that a lot. I will give you some examples. For example, you're using the blue color, a shade of blue. Always stick to that same shade of blue. Don't change that. Maybe another example is that maybe you have a delete action. OK, use always the same delete, not erase, not something else. Maybe you also have an icon for deleting something. Use always the same icon. If it's a different action, use a different icon and use different words. But if it's the same action, use always the same things. It's really, really important, and trust me, especially if you're working on bigger systems, these differences exist. You may didn't notice that because you're working on the same product for a lot of time, but a new user will pick those small issues. The 5th one is error prevention. Again, either we want it or not, our users will make mistakes. There are 2 kinds of errors. It's sleeps and mistakes. If we're talking about sleeps, this is when the user will do something, but because we will have that error mechanism system, we can go back and everything will be fixed. That's OK. Shit happening. But when we have the actual mistakes, it's when a user is making a mistake because they don't know what's the correct route. And this is a bigger issue. This means that you have to go back with your team and figure out what's wrong, why the user is stuck in there, or why the user is making that particular mistake. And it's also usually harder to identify these kind of things, but it's really important to find them, go back with your team, sit down, and find the solution to this issue. Now, the 6th rule is recognition rather than recall. We have 2 types of memory, recognition and recall. In our applications, we always want the recognition kind of style. So when you don't have to think of something, this is recognition. When you just see something and you can understand it, when you don't have to go back in your memory and think of stuff, this is recognition. And the way that you can achieve this into your product is by maybe, let's say, you have a search bar. Maybe you can give some images along with the search results. Maybe you can have an autocomplete. Maybe you can have a list to pick some things. All those things help in recognition. Whereas recall is when our users have to think about something. For example, when you have to think about a name or a date or some other details. This is because out of top of our head, we cannot recall this kind of stuff. And this example that I have here is coming from Coursera. It's a little bit old, but I don't think that they have changed it. And it's pretty useful because we can see the text, we can see the images, and we can understand pretty faster what we want. The other rule is flexibility and efficiency of use. Every user is different, and they usually have a different background. As I said, we want to have the perfect product. But because everyone is different, you should provide something for everyone. You should provide something for the first-time user, and you should provide something for the power user. The power user is the one that knows your system really well. And obviously, you should provide something for the people that are in between these two categories. Maybe the first type that I described, the first-time user, maybe they want more details, maybe they want more guidance, maybe they want to do things a little bit slow so they can understand everything. But on the other hand, the power user, they don't want this kind of stuff. They do want to do things fast, quickly. They maybe want to connect their product to another product, so maybe they want extendability, all those kind of things. So try to have something for them as well. The eighth rule is one of my favorite rules. It's aesthetic and minimal design. And we see, for example, a lot of websites that are having too many things, especially in the front page, as I was saying earlier. We have seen pages that are maybe too colorful. We have seen pages that have weird typography, and you can actually not read anything that they have due to this typography. So my biggest tip here is, actually I have two tips. So the first thing is, if you're not a professional designer, which I'm pretty sure that most of you here are mostly working as developers, engineers, and not as designers. So I would say don't use too many colors, okay? Pick 1, 2 colors and make your website or your product with 1, 2 colors. And then if you're feeling more comfortable, then yes, you can use more than 2, 3 colors. But that's it. And the other tip that I would give you is to pick a simple font family or a simple typography, and then make the font size a little bit bigger than you think. We're not 18 or 20 years old, at least I am not. I want a big font size. Come on, we can do that, right? Thank you. Okay, the 9th rule is help users recognize, diagnose, and recover from errors. We've been talking about errors a lot. We've already mentioned some of the things. But what else you can do is to help them, not only showing the error, but also mentioning what the issue is and how you can fix them. And I think that I have an example here that it's quite good. But I'm not going to read it because I just saw that I don't have a lot of time. Perfect. And the 10th rule is help and documentation. Yes, you should try to have the perfect product, but because we said not all the users are on the same level, then you could have your documentation. The documentation doesn't have to be something big, or it doesn't have to have fancy words and many technical terms. It can be something small. It can be some guides here and there, and Trello actually does a pretty good job there. These were the 10 rules, and now I will move on to the do's and don'ts of UX. This is going to be quick, I promise. So, don't assume you know what users want. That's why you need to do your surveys. That's why you need to sit down with your users and actually observe how they're using the product. Don't follow the hippo at the room, and hippo stands for highest paid person's opinion. Just because your manager or your boss says something, it doesn't mean that you have to follow that. Don't prototype or don't code too soon. Don't focus on what people do rather than focus on what they say. Don't overlook existing insights from customer care representatives. If you have the opportunity to check your support system, do that. You will find things that you didn't know before. Trust me, I've been there, I've done that, and I've seen things that I wasn't expecting to see because I knew my system, I knew what I was doing, but then I checked what the customers were saying, I checked the support systems, and I found out things that I didn't imagine before. Do collaborate, you're never alone. Do find someone qualified to do your research. And I will move on to the do's and don'ts of DX. Document everything. Document everything not only for you, but for your company and for the people that are going to use your product. Reduce ramp-up time, and ramp-up time is the time that a developer needs to start delivering value to a team. Don't overlook soft skills like empathy. This is quite crucial. And I have a quote here that I really like. It says, great DX shortens the distance between intention and reality. Keep that last sentence, intention and reality. OK, I have 10 seconds, so I will run through the next session, the next part, the good and the bad of UI. And you can pick a side here. There will be short tips on the left and the side panel. So, the designer's mindset. The good listens to everyone from decision makers, team members, and stakeholders, whereas the bad one judges and suggests solutions all the time. You can pick your side. The good one questions the status quo and digs deep to find out real problems and needs, whereas the bad one follows the rule of we're always done it in this way. Now, the good one takes time to ask questions and what's missing, is always uncertain about their understandings, whereas the bad one follows their assumptions and is always certain about their work. The good one has many solutions and ideas, whereas the bad one has only one idea and tries to invest their time in convincing everyone that they have the best idea. The good one loves working with others, whereas the bad one loves to work alone. And the good one loves to be wrong, and the bad one loves to be right. And last but not least, the good one leads, whereas the bad one follows. I hope that you picked your side. Thank you very much. Again, if you have any question, feel free to follow me on social.